Hi guys, and welcome to this tutorial in which I will tell you how to write a song, basically. Disclaimer, this video starts at the very basics, so if you are not a beginner, then shoo! No, just kidding. I'm gonna go in big steps here to show you that this part that I just played was actually Twinkle Twinkle Little Star in the re-harmonized version. Disclaimer number 2, there is no one way to write a song. There is so many ways, so I'm not gonna cram everything into this one video. This is 101, the basics, and then I will make a couple of more videos going into more detail. Basically, if you want to write a song, there's two things that you need to know. On the one hand, there is the melody. On the other hand, there is the harmony. The harmony is sort of the carpet of sound that underpins the melody. And the melody, I hope that, and I think that most of you know, that the melody is the thing that is sung, basically. Melodies, for instance, can also be played on an instrument, obviously. Think about a guitar solo or whatever is playing a melody on your instrument, or saxophone solos, things like that, hooks, riffs. But for clarity's sake, melody is the one hand of the equation, and then you have the harmony on the other hand. Now the harmony are the chords, okay? Chords and harmony is the same thing here. So if you want to write a song, there is basically two approaches that you can take. First of all, you can start by first writing a melody and then harmonizing it. And the other way is the other way around. So first write a chord progression, as it's called, and then write a melody on top. That second thing is, in my experience, done very often when you are writing with multiple people. For instance, when you're in a band and you want to write a song with the entire band, most of the time the instruments will start playing something and the vocalist, just sort of waits and sees what happens, gets into the groove, gets into the feel, gets into the feel of the key and the possibilities of the rhythm and all, and then she or he starts improvising a melody or thinking about a melody on top of the harmony. Let's get practical with that. So say that we would start with a chord progression. I'm gonna play a thing in C. If you're not familiar with what I'm talking about in sense of harmony, keys, scales, and all that kind of stuff, I think the most important thing you can and have to know if you want to start writing songs is about harmony theory, about chords. Okay? Now, I have a free intro course which will show you how chords work. You don't have to take it from me or with me. There's tons of different options out there, but if you want to have a free introduction, then I will post a link over here or over here, which will take you to that intro course, which will show you how to work with chords. Because here's what we're going to do. If we're staying in C and we want to have a chord progression, sounds good, right? Sounds very natural, and that is because I'm playing a chord progression that is very natural. Now, before you say that you want to write something that's super difficult and pretty weird, I understand if that's the case. If it's not, I understand also, because there are sort of two groups of people, There is the one that wants to hear what it has always heard and what sounds familiar and pleasing to the ear, which is all the pop music that's getting crammed through our throats throughout the radio stations nowadays. Actually pretty basic and simple music, very suitable to teach you the basics. And then there is the other end of the spectrum of people that want to have this really experimental music and think that that end of the spectrum is super blunt. There is something to say for both ends, and there is a whole spectrum in between before you get to the outer ends, so to speak. So I'm going to start over here because this is the basics as mentioned, right? You can, if you understand this, you can gradually get more difficult up until the point that you think it's cool enough to, you know, difficult enough to stop getting more difficult and experimental. But so a chord progression 1, 4, 5, 1 is very common. It's used in blues, pop, and jazz even, but in more difficult versions, so to speak. So if we'd say that we find that pleasing to our ears, a couple of things to note. If you have found some chords that you think sound good after one another, you could obviously do this with no knowledge at all. But if you do have the knowledge and you can clarify what these chords mean, what their functions are, you sort of tend to grow into this thing of what is actually happening and how can I reuse what I know I like, or how can I find what I hear in my head. You know what I'm saying? There are sort of two ways to link this stuff up. But this is the chord progression. And then you can write a melody over this, right? Twinkle, twinkle, little star, what you are. It's kind of embarrassing. I don't even know the lyrics to this song. But just to have an example of something that could be improvised over this chord progression, right? Because now we have a chord progression and a melody. It could have also gone the other way around. So suppose we first have written the melody just out of the blue. Then there is, if you know your chords, you can kind of underpin this with a bass, for instance, which is basically the root and the foundation of the harmony. So now I played the root notes as being the bass notes to underpin this melody. If we fill up those chords, if you have this chordal knowledge, then you can start to harmonize it with the entire chord. So this is a way that you could go, right? You have a melody and you want to hear something nice, start finding cool bass notes. But you could also start with actual full chords. If you'd started with the bass notes, this would be kind of the next step, so to speak. So these are the chords: C, F, C, F, C, G, C in inversions. Let's play those and sing the thing. I actually think I just did that, but twinkle, twinkle, little star, what you are. Now, I picked these chords because they are the most obvious, I think, chords. How did I pick these chords? Based on what? There's a couple of things that you can do. Obviously, if you started with a chord progression that you think just sounded cool, then the melody will fall on top and then you have gotten to this thing. But maybe if you got that thing, you think that the chords don't sound cool enough. And that is when you can start re-harmonizing. The other approach would be, if you'd have written the melody, then how can you harmonize it? Because it's kind of the same thing, right? You have to find which chords fit. First of all, you look at what the key is, right? These are the notes that we're using. So it's kind of obvious that it's C, although you could also still think that it's in F. F, but na 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 sounds really as home. So that's the key of the song. So starting on the tonic of the song, so if we're playing in C, starting on a C chord is just a very logical thing to do. Blunt, maybe, yes, but logical. So that's what I did over here. So as you see, it also implies C a lot, this melody, because it's 2 notes from the actual C chord, right? Now we're going to a, so that's a note that we have to find we can find a new chord to. I could have also just stayed on C for the whole thing. That's another thing, right? It's all about creativity. So I'm showing you a lot of different things. In the end, you have to decide what you feel and think sounds good. Say I would have stayed on C. Right? Not a lot of movement, but it works, right? Because the key is C, you can just keep on playing C. Okay. But I decided that that was a good moment to change the chord. Why F? Well, because first of all, that 1-4-5 progression as a chord progression, or going from the 1 to the 4, from the 4 to the 1 again, as I did, the 1, 2, 3, 4 to the 1, is just a very natural sound to our ears because it's done so often, but also because mathematical structures in music. That's for another lesson. So as this is an A over there, it's the third of an F, right? So basically notes that are strong, or actually chords that are, melody notes that are strong on the chord or vice versa, are the root, very blunt but works, 5, a little bit less blunt but strong still, and the third. So options that we would have had are gazillion, but going from C, we could have played an A minor. So that would have sounded like this. Totally changes the atmosphere, right? Because we're going from a major to a minor chord. Another alternative would have been, for instance, D minor, which is pretty cool, as I will show you in a second, because it's the parallel of F. Right? And now I got a totally different chord progression because I changed that second chord. The whole progression wanted to flow somewhere else. Okay, but I could have done super many other things as well. So I picked F as being the most blunt and most obvious one. And then that G is no longer really on F, so I decided to swap back to C, right? Then we get an F. Well, we can go back to F again. E is now the third of C. And then we have a D. The 5 wants to resolve to the 1 really strong. That works really strong as an ending of a phrase or a song even. And it works perfectly over there because it's the 5 of the chord, right? Re-harmonization, for instance, using, and I have done a whole video on this, a drop third re-harmonization as I call it. Go check that out. I will post the link below this video, but for now, in a short description, it's swapping a chord that you've already decided on. So you can do this to re-harmonize a chord progression that you've written. If you have a melody and you think it's pretty cool, but it needs a little juice, using the parallel, and then maybe as a 7 as well, because we can use extensions as well to juice up the chord. As you'll see, right? If I play a D minor 7 now, then I actually have an F chord, so it's super closely related, but it changes the atmosphere quite a bit, not only because now it's a minor chord, but also because it's an extension chord. So and then maybe swap for F to have a little variation. I'm going to show you another thing which is maybe even cooler. Now we went to F this time, but if I now do that and then go to C, but with an inversion, so I have a different bass note, and then go to a G with a 7 to the 1. Another option would be to stick a 2-5-1 in between, which could have gone like this. Right? So now on the F, I actually inserted its parallel over there, which made it a D minor 9 even, because that was a melody line over there. So da, 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 2, this is a 2 of the tonic, 5, 1. Now, just to get to that end thing real quickly, there's a lot of steps in between over here, but I hope that you get an idea about reharmonization and all. But what I did was throw in a lot of extensions, and then started not on the actual C, but on its parallel, the same trick that I just used. So let's say that we have twinkle, twinkle, little star. So the first chord is reharmonized and dressed up really heavily to a minor 11 chord over here. Then I go to a major 9 chord for the F, so just adding a lot of extensions, and then to a C, add 9, right? So that's the first thing that I did. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. Then I did that D that I just showed you, but in a little juicier version. Da, da, C over E. So that's a altered chord. If you want to step out of key and make it juicier even. You are. I will play it slowly in its total and in sort of in time. We'll get into rhythm in the next video. It's super important as well. Right? Then you get to a totally different thing with the exact same chords. Sorry, I couldn't help myself. Just give a quick hint on. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. Going home or ending on the 1 chord always is super strong. Maybe you want that more ambiguous sound and don't end on the 1 chord, but I could really give you a gazillion tips over here. I just wanted to make the basics clear. Either start with a chord progression and start improvising something, then you get a melody, or start with a melody and start harmonizing it with chords. If you want to learn about chords, if you don't know at all what it is, then get over to my website. I have a free course that will teach you the basics on this. If you don't want to take that, then there is tons of free material out there that will teach you how these chords work. But that's my core tip. Get to know chords and scales and harmony theory. That is the foundation of songwriting. If you want to learn more about this, get over to my website. If you like this video, then please hit the thumbs up, like it, share it, leave a comment, and I hope to see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.